Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have a fresh compilation of revenge stories for you. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. And our first story. Someone scammed me for $280, but I wasn't accepting defeat. First off, I would like to state that I am, in fact, an idiot who has learned his lesson. My birthday's coming up, and I decided to treat myself to a new pair of sneakers. Been having a good year at my job and don't really spend much on myself. I've always wanted a pair of Yeezys, so I got online and found a pair at a really good price. When I was messaging the seller, he asked if I would be willing to not pay through the site to avoid seller fees, and he would sell even cheaper. He even offered to take the payment through Chase, which I assume would have me protected. So we used the Zelly Quick Pay feature. Before I sent the money, he even sent me a pic of the sneakers and pics of several receipts from the UPS USPS showing that he sells several pairs of sneakers and actually ships them. I agree, and we begin a conversation on IG. Guy seems legit. Doesn't look like he needs to scam people. Seemed legit enough, so I sent him the funds thinking I just got a deal. No response after the funds are sent. A day goes by with no answers. At this point, I chalk it up to a loss and learn my lesson. Should have spent the extra $40 and got it from a verified site. Also, do not use Zelly. Chase told me because I use QuickPay, there's nothing they could do except contact police. They have no fraud protection for Zelly, even though I paid for it through Chase. It turns out Zelly is a scammer's best friend. Only trust PayPal. At that point, I was more PO'd that I allowed myself to get scammed. Not so much about the money. I'll survive. This is when I go into full 007 mode and start my revenge. I find the guy on Facebook and put his name into the white pages and find his home number and I call it. The kid still lives with his parents, so I figure they should know what's going on. I speak with his mother and she has no idea what's going on, but that he isn't home. I said unless you want the cops at your door, he'd better call me. 5 minutes later, I get a restricted call. It's him. He has no idea who I am and had not been speaking with me at all. It actually turns out his phone was stolen on NYE and didn't have his IG account locked. Or his Venmo account. The guy who stole his phone used his Gmail account and IG to post shoes, then never sent any of them. Happened to a bunch of people in a few days. This is where the guy effed up. The real guy tracked the Venmo account and matched it to a very similar Facebook and Instagram account name. I decided to throw a dart in the dark and sent a pic of the Facebook account to the guy who scammed me. First response, "Where'd you get that?" For whatever reason, the scammer decided to text me from his real number at that point. Now I have his number. I now decided to bullcrap him and told him that the Chase fraud specialist was waiting for me to send the pictures of the receipts he'd sent me. I told him they could use the very visible tracking numbers to find the seller and their billing info since it was a debit transaction, and that I now had Facebook photos of him and a name and number. I told him that the real person told me theirs was an active police investigation and this was the info they needed. I started demanding my money back or I would turn everything over, and in 5 minutes I had all my cash back. He made me promise to delete everything if he sent it all back. I even gave him some answers about the fake conversation I had with Chase. He was trying to find out what they knew, which was everything. Best part was, he also used his personal account to send me the money back, which shows his real name, had a slightly different one on Facebook. The account would also have all his billing info. He really wasn't a very good scammer. All of the accounts were deleted and I've been blocked. Doesn't matter. I'm sending everything to the poor guy this scammer's been destroying. The poor guy said it's been the worst 4 days of his life. Constant calls and emails about being scammed. Luckily, Venmo covered all the money that the scammer transferred out of his account, but he also wants revenge. Hopefully, he'll get it now, since we know exactly who it is. I did go through a verified site and purchase the shoes for real with no worries. I had to have them on principle at that point. LOL. Also, the guy took everything I sent him to a detective that he's working with. We'll see if anything happens. And our next story. The story of how my parents' HOA tried to use a 40-year-old rule to stop them from repairing hurricane damage. 2 years ago, Florida got beaten up pretty badly by a couple of hurricanes. My folks live down there, and while none of the damage that they sustained was life-alteringly horrible or home-destroying, homeowners insurance kicked in, and they had some water damage through the roof. They also needed a new one because of all the shingles that had come off and debris that had punctured it. My folks looked through roofing options and determined that a metal roof would be a great option to reduce damage/maintenance on their home. Plus, it'd serve as a more energy-efficient option with passive solar collection and fewer thermal losses in the summer and winter. It's more expensive, but my dad was basically r/personal finance incarnate while I was growing up. He's in his 60s and has finally concluded that he has FU money so long as that community is concerned, so the roof was a good investment. It looked like a win-win-win with that roof. Then they reviewed the HOA and saw that as of 1989, metal roofs are prohibited in the neighborhood, subject to fines and mandatory removal. Reviewing the bylaw further showed that it was clearly referring to older, crappier tin roofs, not a proper metal one like today's market provides, which looks great and has all those other benefits. My folks wanted to play by the rules, though, and called up the HOA to explain the situation. HOA was friendly and said they would be looking into that bylaw, and that my folks weren't the only ones who requested that they be allowed to have a metal roof. My parents couldn't get a roofing contractor in for a few months anyway, too much demand since everyone else's roofs got wrecked, so they waited a few weeks and got nothing new out of the HOA. Tried again a few weeks later, nothing. After 2 months of this, they said F it and started construction on the metal roof. Popular opinion in the neighborhood was on their side, and the roof was covered with a tarp that wouldn't last forever. The new roof got installed over the course of a few days. Then we found out the HOA's crappiness. The neighborhood has a nice brick sign out front that says, "Welcome to neighborhood name." It's very classy, very nice, and was very damaged in a hurricane. The HOA was strapped for money due to other repairs and dues, so some jerk had the bright idea to impose as many fines as they could on the neighborhood to pay for these repairs, starting with my folks. They served my folks with a letter claiming that they were in violation of the HOA and demanded a $25,000 fine and that they remove it, which is, of course, absurd. My poor mother is very much a play-by-the-rules sort, and she was worried sick. My dad's ex-Navy and a contract negotiator. He essentially checked his 60-year-old knuckles and said, "Oh, you little craps want to play, do ya?" So they set about researching and making some calls. Poor Mom kept waking up at 1 a.m. unable to sleep, and I felt terrible for her as she went through this. But then they had a breakthrough. A few weeks after being served, I'm fuzzy on the timeline since I don't live in Florida, it may have been less, there was essentially a burn them at the stake meeting of the HOA where my parents could defend themselves for an absurdly short amount of time, and the HOA could rip into them for daring to defy their wrath. So my mom, because she's more social, has a better temper than Dad, comes up to speak. Lets the HOA know that they can't do this. The HOA smirks and says, sure they can. They have a 40-year-old statute saying they can. Mom says, you do, but I have state law on my side, which supersedes your statute. Turns out there's a law in Florida stating that an HOA, or really any regulation, cannot be used to prevent an eco-friendly improvement from taking place on anyone's private property. And wouldn't you know it, the passive solar of the metal roof counts as an eco-friendly improvement. Turns out the roofing contractors have dealt with similar stuff before. When my dad mentioned what was going on to them, the contracting official pulled out a few letters of accreditation and a few past cases where the court had determined that their product was eco-friendly and forced the HOA to pay all legal fees. My mom produced all this for the crappy HOA, who had to admit that this was in fact ironclad. Strapped for money as they were, they couldn't afford to pay a lawyer. HOA head growls, "Is that all?" Mom turns up the sweetness to 11. No, I see in the bylaws that we can vote to impeach board members at any HOA meeting and to elect their replacements. I move to impeach all of you. I nominate my husband and, she rattled off a list of names. HOA is stunned. While Dad looked into the legal, Mom looked into the new neighborhood. Popular opinion was on their side, and the hearing was public for the neighborhood. Mom convinced a majority of the homeowners to attend and remove the board for their crappy policy. With that, my parents are now on the all-new board, and Dad is putting his contract negotiation skills / own craftsmanship skills to work, repairing the front entrance. And metal roofs are now allowed by the all-new HOA. And our next story. A dog's revenge. When I was a kid, we had a very large German Shepherd. When we put him outside, he was on a 75-foot rope tied to a tree. The dog could run all around the yard and make it just up to, but not onto the driveway. Unbeknownst to us, the paperboy, this was the 1980s, would drive up to the edge of the driveway and rev his moped to tease our dog. He'd rev and rev the engine while our dog would go nuts at the limit of his rope up on his hind legs, trying to reach out and grab a hold of him with his front paws. Anyway, one day the rope broke, so my dad went to the hardware store for a new one. The guy tells my dad we don't have any 75-foot ropes, only 50 or 100. My dad took the 100. I just wish I could have seen the look on my dog's face the next day when the paperboy came around and woke him up with that stupid moped. I always imagine that dog taking a second to thank the dog gods for the day of reckoning hath come. Our dog charged, jumped in the air, and took the kid off his bike. The kid tried to get away, but our dog bit down onto his ankle and dragged him back into the backyard. Eventually he got away, but had to call the police to get his moped back. The dog was sitting patiently next to it. We found out about it when the police came by that night to complete their report. The next day, the kid's dad called and told us not to worry about him suing. His son was an idiot and got what he deserved. That's how we got the whole background. I miss the less litigious decades. Good dad for realizing the kid's an idiot and deserved it. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.